Welcome back to Black Cat Crypto Club. Here we are again, guys, for another Friday weekly rundown. Week went by in no time, but thanks for joining. Now, the funny thing is I did record an entire 45 to an hour long video on Wednesday after the FOMC meeting. Unfortunately, after I got done recording it, I noticed that the video and audio ended up being pretty glitchy, and I didn't have time to really go back and re-record the entire thing. So I scrapped that video, but for the most part, everything and more from that video is in this video with just a lot better production, some video clips for you guys, and a bit better flow. So which reminds me, for those of you that did watch last Friday's rundown, or by the end of this video, if you watch this, do me a favor and let me know in the comments what you guys think about this format of video. It does end up taking quite a bit longer to plan and edit and upload than kind of my, off the cuff videos that I do. But if you guys are liking it, then I will continue to do these every Friday. So let me know down in the comments. I really, really appreciate it. All right. So a lot happened this week. So let's get into it. First and foremost, we had the FOMC meeting on Wednesday, guys. I want to take you over to this article from Business Insider right here. So we had that meeting Wednesday, and just as expected, the Fed cut rates, like everyone was expecting, 25 basis points. Also, just as expected, in my opinion, Jerome Powell expressed that we've seen CPI and PPI inflations ticking up, and there could be concern for possibly slowing down rate cuts next year. Now, this might be a no-brainer to any normal person, but to the speculative, fragile traders, this was completely unacceptable, apparently. And what we've seen over the last few days was about 10% sell-off in Bitcoin, but also stretched across the entire crypto market and all of Wall Street. The funny part is that Powell himself said it is very unlikely that there will be rate hikes next year, and that they still project some rate cuts in 2025. Powell continued to reinforce his stance that the FOMC makes decisions based on the most current economic data, meeting to meeting. They don't make decisions ahead of time. So the projections that we will only get a few rate cuts next year is really pretty speculative in and of itself, knowing how the FOMC and the Fed works. But I'm really not I'm not sure, what the markets thought was such a big surprise. And maybe this was just a good excuse for big money to kind of swoop down and steal up all of that leverage that traders kept piling in. If you guys look over here at the Bitcoin liquidation heat map, you can see that right after the FOMC meeting, it was right here was when the FOMC meeting started. But we swooped down, we liquidated all of they stole. But they liquidated all of this leverage here. We kind of came down and bottomed Wednesday night and kind of traded, pretty sideways for the most part, and started kind of coming back up right up to this massive short that had kind of accrued just overnight. And then we eventually liquidated all of that short, and then quickly, instead of, like you would think, liquidating shorts would normally push us to the upside, but instead, right after we liquidated that short right there, or all of those shorts, we were like the markets or the big whales or the market makers, the exchanges, whoever was like, yeah, look at all this we could have. And we, just dumped all the way down here, liquidated all of that. And honestly, there's a pretty big chunk right down here at about 95,300. So we could possibly see that. I don't know if that's, for certain, because now we do have a whole lot of shorts accrued up here too. So, but anyways, guys, that's just liquidations of leveraged traders. And it's just like Bitcoin to do that, during these parabolic moves upwards, we will have, historically, we will have a 30% correction and we'll liquidate all of the leverage and shake out all the weak hands. So now the big question is do we get those massive 30 to 50% corrections like we've seen in previous cycles? Some, and myself included, honestly, have kind of wondered if Wall Street being involved now, that kind of the volatility will be kind of dampened. But if we take a look at the Bitcoin ETF flows this week and as of last night, the ETFs sold off yesterday, guys, big time. We had a $671 million outflow from the ETFs yesterday, with none other than Grayscale leading the pack. Between their two ETFs, they sold over $275 million worth just from their two ETFs. Now, the interesting thing is, again, guys, BlackRock didn't have any outflows. They didn't have anything coming in, but they didn't sell anything. Fidelity, Bitwise, all of ARK, all of these guys had pretty big outflows. The only one that had 2 million worth of inflows, interestingly, was Wisdom Tree. So guys, this, honestly, I look at this and I see opportunity. Silver lining, the optimist in me says, good. Wall Street, you can sell us our Bitcoin. And this would be a great time to just steal that away from them. Unfortunately, I don't think a lot of retail gets caught up in their emotions, and they're selling right now as well. Like I said, flushing out the weak hands. And I guarantee, I all but guarantee Wall Street is going to want this Bitcoin back. But they're not going to be getting it from me. So where are they going to get it? Get it from? That's really the big question. Okay, so let's get back to the FOMC meeting. There was one journalist that asked a question that kind of blew me away and had me kind of laughing, because as far as I know, this was the first time that Bitcoin has ever been brought up at the FOMC press conference.
So if I may, speaking of assets that have been buoyant, do you see any value or benefit in the U.S. government building a reserve of Bitcoin?
We're not allowed to own Bitcoin. The Federal Reserve Act says what we can own, and we're not looking for a law change. That's the kind of thing for Congress to consider, but we are not looking for a law change at the Fed.
So as you can see there, the journalist asked Powell what his thoughts were on a U.S. strategic Bitcoin reserve. And you may have noticed that Powell got a little uncomfortable. His body language kind of shifty a little bit there. And he didn't even address the real question. Instead, he just said that the Federal Reserve couldn't hold Bitcoin and kind of passed the buck, no pun intended, And he said that that was something that Congress would have to decide. You know, the funny thing here is that the Federal Reserve wouldn't even be the ones holding Bitcoin for a strategic reserve. That would all be handled through the Treasury. So he didn't answer the question at all. But a lot of people in crypto took this whole thing really, really negatively and basically thought that Jerome Powell was saying that we couldn't have, it was illegal to have a Bitcoin national reserve, basically, and that we'd have to change laws. Me, on the other hand, I was laughing that Bitcoin even got talked about. A lot of these things happening with crypto and Bitcoin, you know, the fact that governments are talking about Bitcoin reserves, the fact that crypto and Bitcoin has literally influenced elections. And we'll get to that later on in the show. But, you know, the fact that major institutions are now buying Bitcoin and implementing the Bitcoin strategy into their own treasury, you know, if that's happening, you know, pretty much, you know, the fact that that's happening is, you know, 4 years ago, this would have been inconceivable that any of these talks or anything would be happening, you know, let alone Bitcoin being a subject at the FOMC press conference. You know, it's, in my opinion, pretty positive sign and a pretty big deal. So speaking of Bitcoin strategic reserves, I've comprised a list of all of the countries and the cities that are now considering Bitcoin reserve. First of all, we have the United States, of course. We have Russia, Brazil, Japan, Poland, and just this week we saw a parliament member that brought it up in a discussion at the EU. So, you know, big things going on as far as countries all around the world talking about Bitcoin national reserves. Now, as far as states go within the U.S., we have Florida, we have Pennsylvania, and we have Texas. And also, guys, if you remember back probably 5-6 months ago, we saw Wisconsin buy the Bitcoin ETF and included that in their pension fund. So, you know, it's not a strategic national or a strategic state reserve, but Wisconsin bought months and months ago. You know, and now we have just recently the city of Vancouver, whose mayor is now proposing the same kind of thing. Now, the big thing here is that most of these have only happened recently since Trump announced that, you know, his plans for a national Bitcoin reserve, and subsequently won the election. I've talked before about how, you know, the U.S., if it does indeed adopt a Bitcoin national reserve, that it will absolutely open the floodgates, guys, for every other country, as well as the entire banking industry, central banks, et cetera, et cetera. But apparently, it doesn't even need to be acted on. Once the world anticipated that the U.S. would implement a Bitcoin reserve, as you can see, those floodgates have already started to open. Now, that said, I do want to show you guys a few clips. First, we're going to jump over here to the parliament member that I was talking about that talked about a strategic reserve for the EU.
3 years ago, across the Atlantic, the president of El Salvador decided to invest in Bitcoins for his country. At the time, he was ridiculed by the political class and the IMF. He now shows a 100% return, with hundreds of millions of dollars available for his people, for security, and for the sovereignty of his country. The whole world is now getting ready to take advantage of this revolution in decentralized finance. Donald Trump is going to create a strategic reserve of Bitcoin for the United States. Jerome Powell, the chairman of the US Federal Reserve, is now talking about digital gold. Bitcoin is skyrocketing. And what about the European Union? What is the European Union doing? It's squandering our money on unbelievable waste. It continues to accumulate tragically inflationary deficits. It insists on regulating, taxing, and holding back. It's time to change the paradigm. It's time to protect our people from inflation and the poor economic choices of our states. It's time to say no to the totalitarian temptations of the European Central Bank, which wants to impose a fully controlled digital euro. We don't want this dystopian world where a European bureaucrat could tomorrow ban us from certain transactions and even kick us out of the banking system with a click, just for something we said on social media or for an opinion that doesn't sit well. It's time to bet on freedom. It's time for our states to invest in Bitcoin to build national strategic reserves. It's time to develop the mining industry. We, the French, hold the cards with our nuclear advantage. Let's stop taxing cryptocurrency holders more and more. It's their intelligence, their risks, their sleepless nights that have built their savings. Let's allow them to protect themselves from the crazy spiral you've created. Public deficit that drives money creation, which creates inflation, leading to chaos. Let's dare to be free. Let's stop being afraid of our own shadow. Let's stay true to the ambition of our civilization. Thank you.
So strong words there being put out for the EU to consider. The next clip that I want to show is from Natalie Brunell's show with the mayor of Vancouver, and this is what he said.
Yes, young people are disproportionately getting hosed in this because their salaries have not kept up with the rate of debasement of currency. But I think every single person should be concerned about this issue. Like, I look at the city of Vancouver, and we're a fiscally responsible administration, and so we're working hard to get rid of inefficiencies and make it more affordable to live here. And I've come to the conclusion, while we can do a lot, if the rate of debasement, the true rate of debasement is, let's say 15 to 20% a year, when you take the real rate of inflation, the fact that we live in a deflationary environment, so you have to add that other 5% onto the 10 to 15% that the governments are printing every year, we're not going to be able to keep up. And when we can't keep up, we will not be able to afford to provide the services we do, like policing and firefighting and issuing permits and sanitation. And so then our city doesn't succeed. And then the businesses don't succeed here. And then people won't be able to live here, and it's game over. Yeah. And so I think we have this awesome opportunity to change that narrative and put ourselves on a very solid financial footing where, if done right, we could set up our city, the city that I personally love more than anything else, for the next 100 years.
I love the quote from the mayor there at the very beginning where he says that young people are disproportionately getting hosed.
He's a hoser. Anyway, so.
Take off, hoser. All right. So, guys, once again, I do want to take you over here. Now, this is the animal sanctuary that I've been really spotlighting this whole month. I do this every month. I have a different animal sanctuary that I bring to you guys in hopes that we can raise a bit of money for these guys. And I do just want to show you guys a post that they made here on Wednesday on their Twitter. And it kind of says, oh my goodness, we're so blessed this year. We got a delivery. The delivery was 25 bags of feed, 10 straw bales, and 5 hay bales. So guys, this just goes to show you, these are the kind of sanctuaries that I'm bringing you guys. Really, really small sanctuaries where 5 bales of hay or 10 bales of straw. This is like, 10 bales of straw is like maybe, $30. So these guys are super excited over like really small donations, to be honest. And, you know, it doesn't take a lot if a few of us even, you know, just donate a few dollars, really goes a long way to help these guys out. So, you know, really consider going over and helping these animals out. Really helps this sanctuary if you can. They have, what do they have? They've got Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, all kinds of different ways that you can donate or support them. All of those links are in every single video that I put out this month in the description of the video. So please consider going over and helping these guys out. Really appreciate it on my end. Okay, so also in the news this week, Monday, we had MicroStrategy announcing again that they bought another $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. Also, we had Similar Scientific, which is another company that has implemented the Bitcoin strategy. They announced another buy. Riot Platforms also announced yet another buy, as well as Mara, which is another mining company just like Riot. Not only are they buying Bitcoin, but they're not selling the Bitcoin that they're mining. So huge for the, you know, both the demand and the supply there are being whittled away. More demand, less supply. But also, guys, we had Hut 8, which is another miner, another mining company that also announced that they're doing the same thing. So a lot of news this week coming out with big mining companies buying Bitcoin, big publicly traded companies implementing the Bitcoin strategy that MicroStrategy has proven to be a glitch in the money matrix. But guys, again, all I see here is all demand and no supply, which you should know what that kind of implies for the Bitcoin price. You know, we've got a shortage, a supply shortage or a supply shock on our hands. Now, speaking of MicroStrategy, it was just announced that the company would soon be added to the NASDAQ 100. Now, this goes into effect next week, but why this is such a big deal is that now all of the people that buy the QQQ fund, many of which are people, everyday people that are just putting every 2 weeks are buying into their 401k, and part of their 401k is the NASDAQ 100. So essentially, you know, we have Bitcoin via a proxy through MicroStrategy is about to open up to an entirely different investment class. A lot of these people, you know, either don't know what Bitcoin is, or even possibly don't even want to buy Bitcoin, but they're going to own it anyway, just through their 401ks as part of the NASDAQ 100. There's even people that just buy the NASDAQ 100 that are going to now own essentially Bitcoin. So big news there, guys. If you guys watched my channel for a while, way back the beginning of this year, I talked about the fair accounting rules that are also known as FASB, FASB, that were due to go into effect late this year, and how these new accounting rules would take, you know, it'd make a lot more appealing. The Bitcoin investment would be much more appealing for these institutional companies, because now companies, can buy and hold Bitcoin. Ever since this actually went into effect, guys, this went into effect December 15th. Now, the thought here is, again, that companies will now be able to hold Bitcoin without reporting it at the very lowest price that it's ever gone while they've owned it. So instead of looking like a black mark on their books to their investors, Bitcoin actually becomes a much more attractive investment for institutions. This is just yet another tailwind, guys. Tailwinds on tailwinds on top of tailwinds. Okay, now the last bit of news that I have for you guys just happened this week, concerns a very anti-crypto SEC chair. Now you're probably going, who's Gary Gensler suing now? But Gensler was not the only anti-crypto chair at the SEC, guys. Carolyn Crenshaw was arguably even more anti-crypto than even Gary Gensler was. And she was, Biden put her up to be reaffirmed into another 4-year term at the SEC this week. So it was supposed to go to Congress and be voted on. I've got a clip that I want to jump over and show you guys. This is from Fox News, guys. Listen in.
Senate Banking Committee set to vote tomorrow morning on the renomination of SEC Commissioner Caroline Crenshaw, and the crypto industry is pulling out all the stops to prevent it from happening. Charlie Gasparino's got all the latest, so they don't want her in there.
Ellie Terry is going to have a full write-up on this in a few minutes, my producer. And, it's fascinating just how much they're spending on this one commissioner. Usually I don't see this. But, if you were going to say who's pretty anti-crypto at the SEC, Gary Gensler would take the cake. He's the outgoing, meaning he's leaving SEC chair. When Donald Trump takes over, he's going to be replaced by Paul Atkins. It would be Carolyn Crenshaw as well. She was seen as a kind of a Gensler surrogate, but only even more anti-crypto than Gensler. And what's fascinating, and this is an Ellie story that's going to be published on foxbusiness.com, is just how much time and effort and they're spending on trying to block her from getting renominated. Biden has renominated her. You have to attach her nomination to a bill or something. There's only a few days left in the congressional session, as you know, maybe a week or so. Ellie has it all laid out. And so they're trying to do it at the last minute to basically install a very leftist, or what they would say progressive, critics would say progressive, anti-crypto person on the commission. So the crypto industry is going nuts. What are they doing? I mean, you see it. You look at Brian Armstrong's, he's the head of Coinbase's Twitter feed. Pretty wild stuff.
I don't follow him, but I should.
You should. They're spending money on ads. Billboard ads, mobile ads and online ads. So they are spending a lot of money. They're also threatening people, Democrats, if you vote for him, for her, to renominate her, we're going to, your score on your crypto score, there's a crypto-friendly score. It's in the story. I can't remember the name of it. It's like the crypto meter. If you're like anti-crypto, you get a bad score. And by the way, money will flow away from you. So they're saying all this stuff, and they're proselytizing to try to get Democrats not to vote for her, or at least delay it and have Trump put in someone else.
Didn't Sherrod Brown lose his seat in Ohio because the crypto industry went after him?
And that's a great point. That's in Ellie's story. Yeah. I mean, all these crypto PACs that get their marching orders from the crypto meter that comes out, moved away from it, threw a lot of money at the other guy, Bernie Moreno, and who's very conservative and pro-crypto. And they're threatening this again. So we'll see. We'll know in the next, probably the next couple of hours, next day or so, whether this thing goes forward or not. If it does go forward and she gets voted in, remember, she's getting voted by the Democrat-controlled Congress.
So what's her term?
There now. It'll be probably a 4-year term.
Oh,
and remember,
that's bad.
Remember how this works. Republican presidents, when they get in office, pick their people. Even they have to pick Democrats as well. So Trump could pick a better, more pro-business, pro-crypto Democrat. But if they get her in now, because Biden is trying to get her in, getting her term extended, or her term ended, get another term for her, and he's trying to do it with a democratically controlled Congress. But you have to do this in a sort of way that it could pose difficulties in timing. Anyway, that's what the crypto industry is saying. Go there, and we're going to vote you out.
Okay, now what we ended up having was Congress ran out of time and ended up delaying her reaffirmation, however you want to say that. They didn't reaffirm her in time to get her another seat at the SEC for another 4 years. And what effectively, this does is it puts it out past January 20th and thus provides Trump with another seat to fill at the SEC, which I can almost guarantee you will not be Carolyn Crenshaw. Now, that's great news. I love to see her go. But this almost ensures that she will not be serving another 4 years in the SEC. So good news there as well. Now, all of that said, guys, there is one precautionary thing that I want to, say that I've been saying for a while about all of the pro-crypto things that have been kind of going on in the government. And that is that I'm a little bit worried, guys, honestly, that the pendulum swings from very anti-crypto to the complete opposite side, and we have a completely hands-off governmental approach to crypto and Bitcoin. And I've said before, there is plenty of fraud in the crypto space, guys. We all know that. Hawk Tua, FTX, Mount Gox, all of these. Gary Gensler and the administration this time chose not to go after those guys, the fraudsters that he could have actually protected investors against. And he chose to instead, really try to stifle the entire industry, which that was horrible, absolutely horrible. But the last thing that really we want is such a pro-crypto administration that they could go completely hands off, like I said again, and continue to allow the bad actors in the space to do what they do. We do not need another FTX or Three Arrows Capital or Mount Gox. And, surely, I hope none of you guys were in some of these other, meme coins and things like Hawk Tua that got the rug pulled out. But, we don't need any more of those companies. We do need regulators to take those out of the space. And even the legit companies, the Coinbases, Binance, all of these publicly centralized companies do need oversight. You'll remember, the same thing happened back in the 80s in the savings and loan scandal when Reagan came into his presidency. And maybe you won't remember. I mean, I was like 3 years old when this happened, but, Reagan came in and went so completely hands off with the banking system that all kinds of dirty things were done. And, a lot of regular people lost a lot of money. It was a huge, huge scandal. For the last thing, that the last thing we need is, more FTX or something like the savings and loan scandal that we saw in the 80s, guys. We don't want that. Not to say that we shouldn't be excited that Bitcoin and crypto are finally gaining global attention, or that we've, seemingly won the then they fight you phase of adoption. But we don't need to be killed with kindness, so to speak. We don't need the pendulum going completely opposite, like I said. So that's just a cautionary thing, something that I kind of worry about. I hope it doesn't happen. I don't think it will. I think we'll get some fair regulation now. But we'll have to see, guys. Like I said, you shouldn't trust your government, shouldn't trust politicians. That's the beauty about Bitcoin. You don't need to trust anyone for Bitcoin. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up this week's Friday Weekly Rundown. If you guys like the video, please hit the like button, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And thank you so much for joining today. If there's anything that you guys want to see on the channel, any questions that you guys have, please let me know in the comments. Also, remember, let me know in the comments if you guys like this format of video, if it flows a little bit better. I feel like it cuts the time down quite a bit also for you guys, so that's good. And guys, I will see you guys in the next video.